Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this chilly Ohio day. During this webinar, you will get a high-level rundown of event waste reduction and recycling. Then we're going to finish with question and answers. Just in case you missed something we say, don't worry. We are recording the webinar, and it will be posted on YouTube. Information presented today is designed to be useful for all size private and public events with a range of themes, from conferences to music festivals. After this webinar, you will be prepared to substantially increase diversion at your events. Recycling and composting at your event is not only good for PR, but also helps create local jobs and conserve natural resources. Before diving into the content, it's always nice to know who's talking. My name is Alex Slaymaker, and I'm SWACO's Outreach Specialist. Prior to coming to SWACO, I created the first zero waste event program at Ohio University. Go Bobcats! I also helped Events Go Zero Waste and launched a zero waste education program for staff and students at Arizona State University. Now at SWACO, I work on a diverse range of programs, including helping event organizers go green. In this role, I have the pleasure of collaborating with my co-presenter, Christy Higginbotham.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Christy Higginbotham. I'm a programs administrator at SWACO. I've been with SWACO for over 17 years and specialize in helping events and schools implement waste reduction and diversion programs. I also administer the SWACO grant programs for communities and events.
We encourage you to type questions or comments as they pop into your head. Hopefully you see that question panel in your little panel there. And we will follow up via email and answer any questions that we don't have time to answer in the end. And new questions will definitely arise while you implement these ideas we share today. So never hesitate to reach out to us. We're always here and available to help. Before we dive into event waste reduction, I wanted to give a high-level overview of SWACO's programs for those of you who aren't familiar with us. SWACO is a public agency serving all of Franklin County, and we work to position our region as a leader in environmental sustainability by offering a range of waste reduction, recycling, and safe disposal services, including the provision of recycling education and recycling drop-off containers, along with the Bring Me Back campaign, encouraging residents to recycle plastic bags, film, and wrap while opting for reusable alternatives whenever possible. We sponsor free yard waste composting for Franklin County residents and collaborate with law enforcement to reduce illegal dumping. Our team helps communities recycle electronics, provides free household hazardous waste disposal, and offers landfill tours. In fact, over 2,000 school kids learned about the importance of waste reduction on our landfill tour last year. We also offer financial and technical assistance to schools, community organizations, and event organizers, which brings us to the focus of today's webinar. First, we're going to share a little bit about specific event waste reduction programs that we provide. Then we'll dive into exactly what's accepted for recycling, and then a few best management practices to wrap it all up. If you're planning an event and need recycling bins, but you lack year-round storage or only need containers a few times a year, you may want to consider borrowing containers through this program. We loan recycling, compost, and landfill containers to event organizers hosting public events in Franklin County. Containers may be used for many types and sizes of events, including small events in one little room with 25 people or huge events of 500,000 spanning large parks. This program is very popular. Event organizers diverted over 90,000 pounds of recyclables over the last 7 months alone using these bins. We loan clear stream recycling, compost, and landfill containers that are collapsible and easy to assemble. We also provide sorting signage like you see in this photo, which I'll talk more about later. Specifically, event organizers can request up to 150 recycling containers or 75 recycling and 75 landfill containers for their event. 10 compost containers are also available for loan. Each bin, including the lid and frame, requires a deposit of $10. No portion of this deposit is cashed if all the bins are returned undamaged and clean. Once event organizers request to borrow containers for an event, they work with me, Alex, to organize pickup and drop-off. If you rent over 100 containers, our team will arrange drop-off during normal work hours. If a smaller number are borrowed, then organizers are asked to pick them up and drop them off at our office in Grove City during normal work hours. For a little context, I can fit 30 of these containers in my little Chevy Cobalt, so they really break down well. If you're interested in this program, check out our website for more info, swaco.org/CLP, and also feel free to email me, and I'd love to talk about it. All right, over to Christy.
Thanks so much, Alex. If you have other ideas for event waste reduction or would like to purchase your own bins, you may be interested in our Event Waste Reduction Grant Program. The Event Waste Reduction Grant Program is a competitive grant program that provides reimbursement funding for activities that increase recycling, reuse, and composting, as well as diversion-related outreach and education activities at public events. We are available to assist applicants by discussing opportunities for potential funding under this grant program. Please call me if you're interested in discussing an idea or learning more. This program is currently accepting applications until January 12th at 5 p.m., so please don't miss out on this helpful funding opportunity if you think your programming aligns with our eligible criteria. And you can learn more by logging onto our website, swaco.org, and clicking on our Event Waste Reduction Grant page. Another way we assist events with event waste reduction is tabling. We are also working hard to increase our visibility in the community in order to educate and increase awareness about diversion options in Franklin County. We have a wide range of activities we conduct with kids and adults while tabling. Please send Alex an email if you're interested in having us attend your event. So, you may be wondering, with a wealth of resources online about waste reduction at events, why is our team at SWACO investing time and resources into this topic? There are sustainability and waste reduction guides online for event organizers, but what works for events in San Francisco may not be the same strategies that work in Franklin County. So we are constantly updating and sharing resources custom designed for our local needs, infrastructure, and opportunities. Event waste reduction practices demonstrate the commitment of our region in your event to environmental sustainability. Conserving natural resources is a critical part of being a responsible business or organization. Guests care when there is and when there is not recycling at events. Another reason we focus on events is the scale of the opportunity. Due to the large number of events in our community, in our county, with over 41 million visitors a year, a high volume of material is disposed of. There's a huge opportunity to divert materials from the landfill and also inspire thousands of guests to make more sustainable choices in their everyday lives. Events are a high-impact way to support a cultural shift towards sustainability. For these reasons, we are so excited about the community's interest in our waste reduction assistance. So, as event organizers, you are in an important position to make a measurable difference and to help lead our community towards a more sustainable future. But you have to know how, which is where we come in. During this webinar, our goal is to empower you and your team to increase waste reduction and recycling efforts, whatever this looks like for you. Every event and person is starting with a different set of limiting factors and demands. Some strategies may be too basic or advanced for your event at this time, and that's okay. Use what you can and make a note of strategies to try in the future. Please also keep in mind our Event Waste Reduction Grant Program and the reimbursement that this program can provide for your event. The grant application, again, can be downloaded via our Event Waste Reduction Grant page. Again, applications are due by 5 p.m. on January 12th. And please do not hesitate to contact me with any questions or if you just want to discuss your thoughts and ideas. All right, with the pep talk out of the way, let's dive in. Back to you, Alex.
I feel inspired. Thanks, Coach Higginbotham. In Franklin County alone, about 3,600 tons of material is landfilled a day. Since it's hard to think in terms of tonnage, this is equivalent to about 720 elephants in weight. Another way to think about this is that the landfill has about 500 to 600 trucks a day dumping materials generated by businesses, institutions, and residents in our county. Notice I didn't say garbage or trash landfilled, because what is landfilled are valuable materials. When we say trash, we're just ignoring that value. Your next question may be, well, what's being landfilled? This graphic shows a breakdown of items that was landfilled from our county just last year. A few things to note: the fibers category at 30% includes cardboard and paper. As you know, these materials are easily recycled and frequently generated at events. Other areas of interest for events are the plastics, food waste, and container glass and metals as well. Now it's time for a little pop quiz. The question is, what percentage of materials currently being landfilled do you think could have been recycled or recovered in Franklin County? So that's what percentage of stuff being landfilled do you think shouldn't have been landfilled, basically. All right, hopefully you have a thought in your head right about now. Over 70% of landfill materials in the county could have been diverted with current markets and infrastructure for a profit of approximately $41 million. We have an amazing opportunity to increase recovery of these materials by improving access and education. Events play a really important role in increasing education and that access to recycling. It may sound pretty doom and gloom at this point, but we do have a lot of reasons to be proud of our community. We diverted over 1 million tons of material last year through composting and recycling, and that's equivalent, again, to about 200,000 elephants, so we're talking about a lot of material here. I find it really inspiring to think about how much we diverted last year, and we actually achieved a diversion rate of 45% through recycling and composting. So that's almost half of everything disposed of was either recycled or composted. And nationally, that average is only 34%. So we're doing a good job, but we could always do better. So you may wonder, where do all these mixed recyclables go and how are they sorted? In Franklin County, most of the single stream or mixed recyclables, no matter what company picks up your recycling, are processed at Rumpke's Material Recovery Facility, or a MRF. This is where recycling from events, residences, and businesses all go. At the Rumpke MRF, co-mingled recyclables are sorted through mechanical and people power. The first step of this process requires people to sort out contamination. The cleaner the material is of potentially dangerous or unaccepted materials like batteries, the safer the workers are, and the less likely the machines are to get jammed. Plastic bags are also a problem material for the sorting facilities because they easily rip and get caught in the machine gears, causing really expensive shutdowns. This is an important note to make. Anytime you can avoid putting plastic bags into the recycling, even if it's holding your recyclables, you're helping make the recycling process more efficient. Which leads us to another question. What exactly is accepted for mixed recycling? All of the materials pictured in this slide are accepted for single stream or mixed recycling in Franklin County. You can see glass bottles and jars, metal cans, paper and cardboard, plastic bottles and jugs, and cartons are all accepted. A few points of clarification: container labels don't need removed, but all of the materials should be free of food and liquid. Plastic bottles should have the cap screwed on, and cardboard boxes should always be broken down. So you may have noticed plastic bottles and jugs are on this list, but plastic cups and tubs are not. Rumpke does not have a long-term contract to sell plastic cups and tubs locally, so they can't collect them. If they go into the recycling, the cups and tubs take a long detour back to the landfill. With this knowledge, we encourage you to consider how to avoid plastic cups and tubs prior to your event so that your guests don't have to deal with the frustration and confusion of trying to figure out what to do with them, and they don't end up contaminating your recycling stream. Another point of confusion is around paper towels, tissues, and napkins. None of these items are actually accepted for recycling, and these materials can be composted, but if you don't have composting, then they need to be landfilled. A lot of the times, event attendees get confused about this and try to recycle them, and this is one of the reasons that having good signage is really, really important, which again, we'll talk more about in a little bit. The highest volume of recycling at events typically comes from plastic bottles, cans, glass bottles, and cardboard. And if you have any other questions about what's accepted, why different things aren't accepted, feel free to type them into the question box. We get those questions all the time, and we'd be happy to answer them at the end of the presentation. You may be thinking, but I see the recycling symbol on all of these things you just told me weren't accepted for recycling. What gives? So let's discuss a few labels that you might see and what they mean. When you see a product with a recycling Mobius symbol, like in the first picture, it indicates that the product can be recycled somewhere. Somewhere being the key word. Just because something is recyclable somewhere doesn't mean it's accepted for recycling where you live. The number inside the recycling Mobius on plastic indicates what type of plastic it is. In our region, it doesn't matter what the number is. If it's any other number or any other type of plastic other than a bottle or a jug, it's not accepted, no matter what the product marketing tells you. We know this is confusing and kind of annoying, but we have no control over how corporations label their products. Now, if you're buying a product and you see these arrows with a percentage in it, this is telling you what percentage of that good is made from recycled content. Buying stuff like napkins or paper made from recycled content helps support the recycling market, and it can help make your event a little bit greener. Likewise, the biodegradable symbol shown in the second picture can also be misleading because this just means the product will decompose eventually, but it could take 30 years. While the compostable symbol shown in the third and fourth pictures means that the product should decompose back to nature in less than 60 days under the right circumstances, like an efficient composting process. Compostable materials are the best option for this because you want to ensure that you are not sending compost containers or compost companies something that you will not be able to decompose. Beware of greenwashing. Just because it's green and has a leaf on it does not mean it's compostable. Biodegradable or bioplastic manufacturers have done a great job marketing how green they are, but don't assume they are the best option. Many compost processors can't actually break down bioplastics quickly, if at all. A 100% paper cup is a much better option for composting than a bioplastic cup. But remember, no type of cup, plastic or paper, is accepted in recycling in Franklin County. So now you understand a little bit better what to recycle, but how do you communicate this to your guests who are probably also a little confused? It's critical to the success of your program to have clear signage to help attendees properly sort. These signs are examples of effective options we make available for download from our website. We encourage organizations to add their logo, if desired, print them out, and laminate them. Then you can either tape the signs to bin lids or borrow signage frames from us, and then keep reusing them. For the 2018 event season, we will also have pre-printed signs available for loan. They wouldn't include your organization's logo, but it could be faster and cheaper than printing your own. We always advocate for events to master recycling before considering the addition of organics diversion through composting. For example, if an event is only achieving a 25% diversion rate via recycling due to contamination and other issues, adding composting may just increase frustration. In this case, we would advocate for planners to focus on recycling efforts first until their diversion rate is a little bit higher. If and when you get to the point where composting is discussed among your team, start looking early for a compost company to take your materials and work with them to ensure your signage is accurate. For example, some processors will take meat while others will not. It's also critical to know that all of your efforts around recycling and waste diversion should be color-coded. The nationally recognized best management practice is to have all recycling content in blue, composting in green, and landfill in gray or black. Please, 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 please do not change this around or decide to go rogue, making recycling orange to match your organization colors or something like this. I promise you, it will confuse everyone tremendously. This is an example of what the signage looks like in practice at a composting workshop we co-hosted a few weeks ago. Why do you think we put the landfill sign at the far right? Well, we read from left to right, so the least preferred option, landfilling, should be the last one guests read. Please always feel free to reach out to our team with recycling designs or info that you plan to share via signage or your website to ensure it's accurate. For example, this year I worked with the sustainability-minded local brewery land grant to develop sorting signs for their events and then we double-checked to make sure they were correct, and then they also aligned with their brand. On the flip side, we had an event this year print hundreds of cardboard boxes to collect recycling, which is great, but these bins actually included inaccurate information and weren't color-coded. So this was pretty confusing for vendors and attendees and led to higher rates of contamination. This type of a situation can easily be avoided with a quick email to our team to double-check and make sure all of your signs look good to go. Additionally, consider how any signage you create, whether it's for containers, maps, or general marketing, can be made for reuse at future events. Removing dates from bad materials is one way to achieve this goal. So now that you borrowed some bins through our loan program and verified that the signage was accurate, what's the next step for event waste reduction?
That is a great question, Alex. Another important ingredient in infrastructure design is ensuring that there are waste reduction stations every 30 to 40 yards. This design will help people see bins no matter where they are in the venue. Some event organizers also purchase large flags or banners indicating recycling stations. The flags actually really help in directing people to where these stations are located, because many times you can just look up above the ground and see them. So you don't want to hang out alone at a festival or event, and neither do your bins. Everybody needs a friend. So when considering how many stations you may need for an event, be sure to always group the bins together. This strategy increases diversion because many people will toss whatever they have into whatever bin they see if it's solo. Also, draw out the collection of areas or dumpsters. These estimates for how many bins you may need are pulled from the City of Columbus's Green Event Guide. Lastly, consider setting up some of your bins a day or so early, depending on how much setup time is required. For example, a bike race or a community festival may benefit from setting up bins the day before, since there will be many people on site setting up who may have recyclable materials, like Gatorade bottles, for example. Consider when and where vendors and attendees will produce certain materials so you can plan when to service the bins. For example, 1 hour before your event starts, it may be strategic to do a round of cardboard pickups from vendors. Create a detailed yet flexible and responsive setup, pickup, and teardown schedule. Outline who's doing what and when, while trying to do your best to schedule pickups on demand at certain peak times. Also consider how vendors or volunteers can effectively report full bins. Establishing a feedback system via text message or different colored flags will ensure guests don't get frustrated with overflowing bins. These are all things that, if considered ahead of time, will make your job easier and the event more successful. In that same vein, ensure recycling roll-offs are removed promptly after your event to reduce contamination, and ensure the metrics reported by your hauler accurately reflect material generated at your event. Lastly, design your system to give vendors easy access to recycling and landfill dumpsters. You can set up all the beautiful, perfectly spaced and accurate stations you want and still have problems if you don't work with your vendors and haulers ahead of time to make sure everyone is on the same page. This really pays off in the long run. So contract language is a critical component and expectation setting, and helps ensure vendors understand your expectations. So working with them to maximize the number of materials distributed that are reusable or recyclable can make your job much easier. And keep in mind, your vendors may be confused about what's accepted for recycling and or composting. Many vendors will swear up and down they recycle and are sustainable, but they are unknowingly putting the incorrect items in the bin. And so you can consider adding certain requirements to your contracts as appropriate. For example, you can require them to collect and break down cardboard for recycling. Flattened boxes take up far less space in your dumpster and can save you money, since recycling bins can fit more when boxes are compressed or compacted, which results in fewer pickups. Provide bulk condiment dispensers instead of packets. We've all seen Taco Bell hot sauce packets in the most random places because people grab 15 and use 2. You don't want this to be a problem at your event. It's a PR nightmare and will cost you more money in litter pickup. Also consider requiring vendors swap out polystyrene or styrofoam for other packaging materials that can be diverted from the landfill. In fact, Columbus-based Compost banned polystyrene over 7 years ago from their events. Another strategy is to make napkins available upon request only and ask vendors to give out a limited amount. As with hot sauce, people's eyes get bigger than their stomachs when given the option to grab for themselves. So you'll also want to require vendors in your contracts to recycle. This is something you want to get ahead of early in the game. So as you are executing these contracts with the haulers, make sure that that language allows for recyclable or compostable goods, and then clean up their space after the event is over. And so it's also critical to work with the dumpster or with the haulers and making sure that the dumpster areas are also clean. If you think it'll be necessary, you can even add a fine penalty for failure to comply with these portions of your contract. When developing contracts with your haulers, view them as an important partner and resource critical to the success of your program. Share your waste reduction goals and require your haulers to report locations where materials were dropped off and diversion weight metrics for how much material was collected. Diversion is the percentage of materials disposed of that were composted or recycled instead of landfill. You can't manage what you don't measure, so you can't improve your recycling practices if you don't know how you did. So tracking the waste diversion is another critical step for communicating your efforts to the public and continuing to reduce your environmental impact as an event. So you can start by setting a goal. For example, you could set a goal to increase your waste diversion from 15% to 30%. Or maybe you're already recycling 60% and you want to aim for 85% this year. Or if you're just starting out, it's important to gather these numbers so that you have a baseline to benchmark for future events. As we discussed earlier, in order to measure this goal, you will need data from your hauler. Require them to provide tipping receipts, listing the weights. If you only plan to have a small amount of recyclable materials that won't fill up a whole dumpster, consider bringing your own scale to ensure accuracy. Merely counting bags for landfilling versus bags of recyclables is better than nothing, but it doesn't give a very accurate diversion rate. It's also important to require your haulers to label the roll-off or dumpster bins so users don't get confused about what goes in. Staff emptying your bins may perceive an unlabeled green dumpster roll-off as composting or landfill when it was actually recycling. So effective labeling on dumpsters as well will minimize contamination. And depending on how large and complex your event is, it is also sometimes helpful to provide a Google Maps image of exactly where dumpsters are located to your haulers. Back to you, Alex.
You've all heard it before, teamwork makes the dream work. It may be corny, but this cliche rings true with event waste reduction efforts. Recruit from your staff, hire assistants, and/or build a volunteer force. This may require incentivization through free tickets or swag. No matter what aspect of waste reduction your team is involved in, they will need to be trained on your organization's goals and what's recyclable or compostable at your event. Our team at SWACO is happy to help with this training. A best management practice is to include training before the event and a refresher right before the event starts. If volunteers have multiple shifts, try to use the same people for waste reduction activities so they don't need retrained. Plus, they will get more efficient each shift and become invested in the outcomes. Of course, don't forget to give huge kudos to all volunteers and staff. Ensure they know it wouldn't have been a success without them. So, what type of roles are needed on this team to ensure that waste reduction efforts are successful? You will need someone to take the leadership role for waste reduction and act as the point person and lead organizer. That's probably you if you're on this webinar. Recycling ambassadors or bin guards may help educate guests at the waste reduction stations. Ensuring there's a waste reduction teammate dedicated to engaging vendors during setup and teardown will help a large event go smoothly. Lastly, you want your organization to be perceived as a good community partner, so don't forget to clean up litter in your event area. I bolded the titles that are critical. The unbolded roles are very helpful, but not necessarily 100% required. Sometimes people may do all these activities or just one. If you have the funds and limited time or expertise around waste reduction, there are local consultants and cleanup teams dedicated to waste reduction who can help. Recycling infrastructure and logistics are super important. But remember, waste reduction is the most important and first place to start with planning an eco event. What are a few examples of how planning can help you swap out disposable items for reusables to save money maybe and help reduce waste? Well, before ordering your materials and promo items, review your list of what you'd like to buy and ask yourself, is there a reusable or recyclable alternative for that item? For example, consider using stamps instead of wristbands to show proof of payment or age. You can be mindful of waste when considering decor as well. Reusable or donatable decor is more environmentally friendly than single-use decor like balloons. And it can be just as festive, so don't worry. Continuing with the reuse theme, for conferences, provide reusable name tags instead of stickers. I know you want the backing on that sticker to be recyclable, but the reality of it is neither the sticker nor the backing is actually accepted for recycling. Are you thinking, well, that sounds good, but I'm kind of worried people won't actually return the reusable name tags? Well, consider incentivizing attendees to return their name tags after the event by offering to raffle off a small prize. The waste reduction lens may also be applied to promo. Try to buy useful goods made from recycled content whenever possible. To continue with the waste reduction theme, we all know printing costs can add up fast, and so can the amount of natural resources used to print guidebooks or other items. Consider creating a simple web page or PDF guidebook to inform your guests. You don't need to develop an app or anything fancy to get the information you want across in a waste-free format. The online guide or program is also a great opportunity to share tips on how to be a more sustainable event guest. So now that people are using their phones to look at their programs and post photos of all the awesome food at your event, let's consider what you should do with all that leftover food post-event. Many organizations and businesses get concerned about donating food due to a perceived liability threat, but this is a myth. There is a federal law called the Good Samaritan Act, passed in 1996, that protects businesses and organizations donating food in good faith. No one has ever been successfully sued with protection under this law. The Mid-Ohio Food Bank and Food Rescue US are great community resources accepting donated food that hasn't been served yet. Another option is to give away food from the event to volunteers or passerbys. For example, at the Green Spotlight Awards last year, hosted by the City of Columbus Green Spot program, all the leftover food was donated to those in need. This was really awesome. Now that we have waste reduction, contracts, and logistics all down, let's discuss how to communicate your hard work to your attendees. It is important to engage attendees about your commitment to implementing successful waste reduction activities. They are part of the team that is going to contribute to your success, so inviting guests to help make the event more eco-friendly is critical. For example, marketing prior to the event can encourage attendees to bring their own cup, bag, bottle, and/or utensils. There are many mediums you can use to share this information. These are basic strategies of engagement, but we encourage you to think creatively as you build out your waste reduction efforts. For example, consider engaging guests about event waste reduction before the event with your website and emails. If you're selling things, if it's a farmer's market type event, encourage people to bring their own bag. During the event, bin sorting signage is very important to success. Also, stage announcements and bin guards at waste reduction stations can provide helpful reminders about recycling options. Personally, I prefer the phrase recycling helpers to bin guards because it sounds a little bit friendlier, but either way works. For the whole timeline of an event, consider how to leverage social media and press releases to tell your eco event story. Tag us at SWACO Green for some guaranteed social media love. As annoying as it is without a Facebook post, did it even really happen? All right, that was a high-level overview of some of the strategies you can use to reduce waste at your event. But how do you go about using all of this information that we just dumped on you? Well, planning is the most critical ingredient for hosting an event achieving waste reduction and recycling goals. Internal and external conversations about these topics need to begin when you start your planning process for other aspects of the event, like permitting and sponsor recruitment. Since efficient material management is all about logistics, a combination of timeline and mapping approaches are helpful when considering how to manage your event material waste stream. So some questions to consider are, what material is likely to be generated? Who is responsible for the management, monitoring, and reporting of each type of material? We all know if you walk out of a meeting with action items and people assigned to them, they're more likely to get done. Material management is no different. Another question to consider is, where is each type of material likely to be generated, and where will it go when removed from the event? This is where even a quick napkin sketch can be really helpful in mapping out where different containers should go. And lastly, how will you know if the event was a success, and how will you tell that story? So this checklist highlights some of the things that we discussed today. With these tips, you are well on your way to hosting an eco event. Thank you for sharing your valuable time with us. We can't wait to hear how you apply these lessons to increase waste reduction at your event. We will email out a recording and links to more resources, so get excited. Also, never hesitate to reach out to Christy or myself with questions about our programs or just event waste reduction in general. We love to answer all of those questions. All right, so speaking of questions, now it is time for Q&A, and it looks like we have some. All right, let's see here. All right, this information is great. All right, thank you. That's very nice. Okay, what type of scales are suitable for measuring waste? Where would I find them? So you can pretty much use, any type of scale as long as you calibrate it and you know it's working accurately. So you definitely want to check the scale, if you know how much you weigh, maybe hop on, make sure it's accurate before you start weighing the materials. But some people, if they're having a small event, they might have a personal bathroom scale, and they can hold the bags and just subtract their weight from that weight, if that makes sense. But then other, companies, breweries, that type of thing, where they might have more industrial scales, they can just use those scales that they already have at their facilities. But yeah, just using a normal scale is easy enough. Good questions. All right, let's see what else is up here. How much do the scales cost? Yeah, it would just be your typical scale, unless you were to, get a nicer, more industrial one, which really I don't think is totally necessary just for this. If you have other needs as well, maybe feel free to buy it. But in the theme of waste reduction and decreasing resource use, stick to the easier option there. So we had another question. Okay, so someone asked, I'm a for-profit company. Can I use SWACO's recycling drop-off program for recycling collected recyclables at a small public event? Yes, you can. You can definitely do that. We definitely ask that if you use our drop-off program and the bins are pretty full, to let us know so we can go empty them so none of our stakeholders get frustrated. And if you're planning to use the containers, you can always give us a heads up just to make sure that we check and make sure they don't get full, faster than they typically do. So, thank you.
Let's see, another question we have is, what are some cool examples of events that have used the Event Waste Reduction Grant Program? Yeah, to name a few, just this last season, we provided grants to the Short North Alliance for Highball Halloween, for helping to create and distribute training materials to their vendors as well as their visitors. And so they received grant funding for that, but then they also borrowed our containers for use at the event. They wanted to test them out really before they purchased their own, and so we got their final report back, and the diversion numbers were impressive. It was really successful. We also have supported City of Destination Hilliard in implementing a reusable bag program for some of their local events. And so, well, actually, once we have all of the final reports in for this last event season, we will include those on our webpage so everybody can see the types of events that we've been funding. But if you go there now, you can also see events that were funded in the past.
Awesome. Thanks, Christy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we had another question about the container loan program, and if the bins that we loan out stay in place on kind of a poor weather day or if they get blown all over the place. So these are actually a lot heavier than like your typical cardboard container, which you do see getting, you know, pushed over in windy events. Since it's a metal frame, I haven't seen any get pushed over by the wind. I'm sure it would be possible with some of the storms that we get here in Ohio, but I've never personally had to stake them down or do anything like that in my experience with them. But again, if it was a crazy storm, you probably would want to add some kind of a weight to the bottom just to be safe, but we haven't had experienced any issues with that to date.
And the other thing about these containers is if they are knocked over or blown over, they'll stay in place as opposed to blowing around. But yeah, you can always weigh them down with a sandbag or a stake of some sort if you're expecting windy weather.
And the only thing I would add is that if it was a super, super windy day, I probably wouldn't put the sign frames up top because that's just going to act as a sail for this container to start sailing around wherever you are. So at that point, I would probably tape the sign on the front of the lid so it wouldn't have as much surface area to catch the wind. So I guess that would be a little tweak day of to decrease waste. Any other questions that you have right now? Feel free to type them in to the little question box. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you learned something new and this was a good use of your time. When you exit out, you will receive a little survey. If you want to fill it out, we always appreciate feedback. All right, I'm not seeing any more questions come in. Again, always feel free to email us, and we're going to go check our social media feeds to see if any of you participated in that challenge in the beginning. So hopefully you did, because you're going to get a really cool surprise. All right, y'all, have a great day. Thanks for tuning in.